In the shadow of statues, a white Southerner confronts history. That is exactly what you are, a white Southerner. That comes with a certain connotation. It comes with a certain stereotype attached to it. But do you think there is something about it being a white Southerner that gives you a different way of thinking in America?
Well, I think so. It gives you a different perspective. First of all, I love the South. It's a great place. I love the city of New Orleans and the people. But when you're dealing with the issue of race, which is one that we have not dealt with forthrightly in the country, sometimes you need to speak truth, and you try to speak it in a way that invites people to a different place.
Right.
And we've had a hard time doing that in this country. And, of course, it's beginning to raise its head again. And every time it does that, I think we have an obligation, especially from the South, to confront the issue and to deal with it so that we can heal a divided nation.
As a white person from the South, do you know why, or do you understand why it is so hard for people to speak?
In the shadow of statues, a white Southerner confronts history. Mayor Landrieu joins us at the table. Hello, white Southerner.
Good morning. How are you?
I was so moved by your book, Mayor. I have to say, I was very moved by it.
There was so many afraid of it. And by the way, we're not all white or all black or all. So I'm from New Orleans, and you know that our history is that we're all mixed up.
Yeah.
In like a really special way, and that that's actually the way it was. If you had 1 ounce of black blood in the South, then you were described as being African American, which is really strange because I think that my great-great-grandmother was what we called a mulatto, a person that had both black blood and white blood. So really, in a weird sort of way, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed person may be considered black in the South, even today.
Because of that one drop rule.
Because of that one drop rule, which is insane, and you write about that in your book as well.
Right, and that was
irrational it all is.
Right, and that was something that determined how people live their lives.
What happened in the Plessy case was that in June of 1892, Homer Plessy boarded a car of an East Louisiana railroad that was designated for use by white patrons only. Although Plessy was born a free person and was 1/8 black and 7/8 white, under a Louisiana law enacted in 1890, he was classified as black and thus required to sit in the colored car. When, in an act of planned disobedience, Plessy refused to leave the white car and moved to the colored car, he was arrested and jailed. The Supreme Court upheld the right of Louisiana to have done so. In the Supreme Court's decision of Plessy v. Ferguson, the court upheld the constitutionality of racial segregation, even in public accommodations, particularly railroads, under the doctrine of separate but equal, which was not to be overturned until 1954 when the Supreme Court decided Brown versus Board of Education.
New Orleans, Louisiana. And we're going to start our story tonight there. We're going to introduce you to Keith Plessy, who is a descendant of Homer Plessy, and he'll set the stage for us and our court case.
This is the location of the East Louisiana Railroad. In 1892, on June 7th, Homer Plessy approached the train depot over here at Press and Charters and purchased a ticket to board the East Louisiana Railroad car, which was mandated that separate cars be established for blacks and whites. 1 block away, he was arrested at Press and Royal Streets. This was not a random act of civil disobedience. It was a well-thought-out plan crafted by the Citizens Committee, a multiracial group of citizens here in New Orleans, made up of 18 lawyers, prominent citizens who were totally against the segregation laws established by Louisiana legislature in 1890. The conductor and the arresting officer, C.C. Kane, already knew that Homer Plessy was going to be riding the train that day. They were part of the plan organized by the Citizens Committee. The East Louisiana Railroad did not agree with segregation. His case started as a local case here in New Orleans to fight against Louisiana's separate car law. Eventually it was moved to the state level and eventually to be known as the infamous landmark Plessy versus Ferguson case of 1896.
That's Keith Ferguson.
A black man to challenge the segregation laws at that same time, what would probably wait for him would be an even worse fate than being hung from a rope and shot while you were hanging from the rope. So when he was arrested on that train, he was protected by the arresting officer, the conductor, and he was hauled off to jail and thrown off the train. And it looked as though he was being thrown off the train, but it was all orchestrated. So when he was brought to jail, he was bailed out and he was protected. So when they went to the court to face Judge Ferguson, they pretty much thought that they were going to win that case because they had previously won the case with Daniel Day-Doom. So when there was supposedly, the records are now gone, but those records were kept at Parish Prison. They have disappeared in 1985, I think. Those records disappeared from Parish Prison. Teacher for slaves who wanted to learn how to read, there was a reading program at St. Augustine's Church, and his first love was education. He fought to keep the education going when the Reconstruction or post-Reconstruction laws were taking away the rights for blacks and whites to go to the same schools. And they began to close the schools that were predominantly black. So he fought to keep those schools open. So he was a model citizen to be selected to test the case. So when he approached the train on June 7th...
Again, because I don't... It's so rare that a white person admits that it was just wrong.
Correct.
It was just wrong.
But it's
not only wrong, the wrong side of history.
And this is one of the reasons why I formally said, I am sorry for slavery. In the books, that we recognize that it was wrong, and that for whatever part we played in it, we say we're sorry. Because the other part of it's about reconciliation. How do you actually reconcile? Not how do you dance through it, but how do you actually come into communion so that you can move forward to the next place? How do you do that? And I thought it was important for the historical record to write down why we did what we did. And then as I started writing it, obviously, the book got to be much less about the monuments themselves than about the intent, like I'm blaming you. So, and I can't litigate whose fault it was, but I can litigate whose responsibility it is to fix it. It's all of our responsibility.